Yo, what is up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Father Built Podcast. I am your host, Bobby Peacock. This podcast is all about building up fathers in holiness, healthiness, happiness, aiming to give these fathers the tools to build their house of legacy. It's good to be back. Now, before I get into the weeks off that I've taken, I want to share with you a fun way that you guys can support the podcast. You can support a brand that helps men specifically. And so this is not sponsored, but I will leave an affiliated link down below as I am an ambassador. As y'all been seeing on the podcast lately, I've been wearing these hats by Friend of Felix. It's a company based out of Canada, and they make amazing clothes, shorts, hats, sweatshirts, and I am one of their ambassadors, and I have a hat, a couple of their hats, three of their hats, technically four of their hats. One says Mental Wellness Club. Another one says right here says Mental Wellness Club. This one says You Deserve Your Flowers. And it's really cool because when you order from them, a part of the proceeds, I think it's 10% of the proceeds, go to supporting men's mental health. So whether that's counselors or nonprofits that support that, and I think it's amazing. And so that's a great way to support the channel, because if you order a hat or get some clothes or whatever, not only are you supporting nonprofits, part of your proceeds go to nonprofits, but also part of your proceeds go to you by getting the hat. But then the other part is I get a little bit of a kickback as well. And so that is a great way that you guys can support the podcast, and you can get something out of it as well. Like I said, this is not sponsored. I just love the brand. I've talked with the owner, and I'm all about supporting brands that support men's mental health. Another brand that's out there is Dad Gang as well. So if you're a father and you like hats, Dad Gang is, I got a couple of their hats and they're pretty sweet too. So I'm not an ambassador for them, but I do have a discount code as well. If you look up Friends of Felix, or if you use the affiliate link down below, you can use Peacock10 to get 10% off anything that you buy from them. And so it's awesome to be wearing these hats, and it's really cool to see how people see these hats and like these hats, and they say, hey, I want that hat. Like, why? Or it's a conversation starter. And so I get to talk about the brand. I get to talk about my podcast. I get to talk about how I'm excited to support men's mental health. And so now that we got that out of the way, let me tell you, y'all, I know I've been spotty these past couple, honestly, this past month or so. I have been just really, really spotty when it comes to the podcast. Life has been lifing real hard for me. And when that happens, yes, I want to make this podcast the priority. I have dreams and I have vision for this podcast and where I want to take it. But it's not the biggest priority in my life. And some of y'all may know this, but a good friend of mine went missing. I think I talked about that in the most recent podcast. And it's been really, really difficult. There's been so much drama surrounding him missing. Did I say leaving earlier? If I did, I meant missing. But there's been so much drama around him missing, and everybody, the keyboard warriors, the social media people think that they have a right to say something and to spew something and to have their thoughts, and everybody has a right to an opinion, but just because you have an opinion doesn't mean that you have a right to speak on certain situations that you don't have permission to speak on. And I think that's really the downside of social media, is that everybody thinks that they are obligated to share their opinions and to share their thoughts when they may not necessarily have a right or even permission to speak into a certain situation. And so I've been dealing with that, and yeah, I mean, and he's still missing. It's been a month, and like my heart just breaks for him. My heart breaks for the family. Like, I'm praying that he is still alive, but you just don't know. You don't know. Um, like my prayers lately have been that, like, God be with him, God be with his wife, and God let the truth come out, whatever that truth is. And then the last thing is, God, protect me, protect my thoughts, protect my emotions, guide me in difficult conversations through this all. Because let me tell you, there's been times where I'm just all like, let's just not have a conversation, and like, let's just like go meet up somewhere. And like, the internal thought is like, let's go meet up somewhere and throw hands. But the reality is like, that's not helpful for anybody. And so it's like, I've been working with God in that and saying, God, like, stump the desires of my flesh and help me see you and see how you will handle this, and give me wisdom and discernment on how to handle this. And so it's been very difficult, and I've been really walking through that. And man, it's just been hard. I'm so thankful and so grateful. And I'm just gonna shout out their names, like my friend Daniel, my friend Zach, my friend Gordon, Jonathan. Those people have been really like checking in, making sure I'm okay. I mean, I think about my friend Zach just texted me yesterday, and I haven't had an opportunity to get back to him. Just to check in on me, to make sure, like, hey, how are you doing? Like, there was a moment where, like, and he, like, this dude is on sabbatical, right? And I'm getting emotional. He's on sabbatical, and I give him a call, and I'm like, bro, I know that you are on sabbatical. I know that you have your 7 weeks off from doing ministry. But I need you to do some ministry with me. That's not how the conversation went, but it was more of like me just saying, like, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to be a burden on you because of everything that I'm walking through. And man, I'm crying. I'm sorry, y'all. But as a man, we need to be able to do that with our homies. And I remember what he said. He's like, bro, for you, there's a lot of things that I would drop for you. And because you are that homie for me, you are that bro for me. And so, Zach, Pastor Zach, if you are watching this, man, I just want to say thank you so much for meeting with me during your sabbatical. And I appreciate that so much. And you can see genuine tears come down my eyes. I mean, like, this is something that I'm learning, is that as men, we need each other. We need our friends to help us walk through difficult times, difficult moments, difficult hardships. Like, we need each other. We can't do life alone. So yeah, I was not expecting to get emotional. I want to apologize, but I'm not going to apologize, because this is real. This is raw. This is authentic. I was talking to a friend of mine, and the organization that I work for, they're thinking about starting a podcast, and I'm kind of like behind the scenes doing some things for that podcast, and we're on the early stages of developing the podcast. And she was talking to me after a meeting, and she was sharing her thoughts, and she was talking about how podcasts is a place where you're more vulnerable within the podcast. And I think that's so true. Like, I want people to listen to this podcast, and I want them to see that there are men that are vulnerably sharing their stories and their hardships because they want to see people grow. They want to see people not make the mistakes that they did, or they want to see people learn. I believe every man that I have on this podcast has something to offer to the world, no matter where they're at in life. There are some people that are going to be on this podcast that I'm going to disagree with, which y'all have seen that. There are some people on this podcast that I am going to agree with. There's some people on this podcast that I'm going to learn more about and just be like, whoa, look at what God did, or look at what God is doing, or man, look what God can do through you. And so I'm so excited more than ever. I'm so excited, and I'm honored for the to be hosting this podcast. And like I said earlier, I have dreams and I have visions for this podcast. But when life is lifing, man, it lies hard. And so yeah, but I appreciate y'all for listening. I appreciate y'all for taking the time to just listen. I have a couple people that send me texts and be like, yo, that podcast was fire. Or I'll just listen to your podcast and thank you for sharing their vulnerability. Like another good friend of mine, I'm gonna shout him out, Carl. He knows what I've been walking through, and he also knows how busy I am. And he texted me and he's like, man, thank you for your podcast, and if you need anything, let me know. And like, that's love right there. That's like brotherhood right there. And it's an honor to have a friend like that in my corner as well. And so, yeah. So my last couple weeks have been filled with a lot. But this podcast episode, there's nothing really like, there's not like a specific topic that we're going to talk about. And it's not as organized. Like, I just wrote some thoughts down that I wanted to talk about in regards to a couple of things. I mean, the first one's confrontation. I am learning so much about confrontation and healthy confrontation, unhealthy confrontation. And like, I found that I have to be very careful. I don't want to say that I love confrontation, but I'm finding more in my life, I'm embracing confrontation. I'm willing to step in to confrontation more and more. I mean, I was in a conversation earlier this week where I was like, this is going to be confrontational. And I went to one specific person, and they're like, well, is this going to be a long conversation? Do we need this person in this conversation? And I was like, no, I just want to go to you. But then I was just like, you know what? No, I need to face this head on with both of these people so that we can figure it out. And I tried to do it in the most humble, serving way that I could. And I'm learning to embrace confrontation even more. And I'm not saying, like, I know there are people that are non-confrontational, and then there are people that are confrontational. And I'm not saying that I'm confrontational. What I'm saying is that I'm learning to embrace confrontation and learning how to do it in a healthy manner. And it has been so good for me. I feel like I must have prayed a while back ago, like, Lord, like, I need more confrontation in my life. Because now I got a whole bunch of confrontation in my life, and so, but it's been healthy. It has broke me down. It has um, made me rely on people like Zach, like Jonathan, like Gordon, like Daniel, to have them come into my life and play a bigger role in my life in this season to help me navigate through confrontation. Um, and so yeah, it's crazy. Like, I'm learning that there are people out there that will get involved in the drama just so that they can be a part of the noise. I'm learning that there are people that are willing to jump into drama just so that they can have a voice to be heard when they weren't even invited to the table, when they weren't even invited to the restaurant. And it's crazy. And sometimes it's like you never know people's true intentions. You never know their hearts. Um, but let me tell you, the internet is a dangerous place. Social media is a dangerous place, especially because we are in an election year as well, and that's even more crazy. And so, um, yeah, it's been hard to walk through that, but it's been so good to walk through that. And something else that I've been learning too, and I was talking to a pastor friend of mine. I shouldn't say friend, but more of a mentor of mine, and he talked about how people underestimate the power of prayer, because like he's in a season of transition, and it's good transition. And I told him, I'm like, like, besides, I don't have a lot to offer, but besides obviously prayer, um, like, is there anything else? And he stopped me, and he's like, and he just gave me a teaching moment, and it was so good and so healthy for me to hear. He's like, whoa, we don't downplay prayer. Like, you should never ever downplay prayer. I think something as Christians, what we have to stop doing is saying, I'll pray for you, and not pray, but instead, I'll pray for you and pray. And so that's been like, when he said that, I'm just like, man, that's so powerful, because um lately I've been saying, like, if the most you can do is pray, pray. If the least you can do is pray, pray. But I'm actually going to switch that up. If the most you can do is pray, pray. If the least you can do is pray, let prayer be the first thing that you do. So let me re-say that, because I think this is important. In my mind, it's important. But if the most that you can do is pray, pray, and pray immediately. If the least that you can do is pray, pray immediately. Make that the first thing that you do, and then have actions after that. I think if you're a believer that is listening to this, there's often times where we get so caught up in the, oh man, thoughts and prayers to you. Oh, prayer, I'll pray for you. Or, oh, we're thinking about you, we're praying for you. But are you really? Are you? And so that's the other thing. I want to jump back, because I didn't say this earlier. This is in regards to my friend missing, and it just came to my thought. I meant to say this earlier, but like, these past couple of weeks, I felt like I've been stuck. Right. This podcast was birthed out of my father and his life, and my biological father, and his life. And wanted to start this because I want to give fathers the tools. And I felt stuck because with my friend missing, there's no resolve to that. And it's how do I continue to move on with my life when my friend's kids and wife are at home not moving on with their life and still mourning? With my father, it was one of those things where, okay, he's in the hospital. Okay, I'm gonna go immediately fly and see him. My father, okay, it's time to say our goodbyes. All right. Okay, there's a funeral. Okay. And I mourn. I mourn the loss of my father. And I feel like I'm in this season where I'm not able to mourn the loss of my friend, so I feel stuck because I don't know what to do. And I felt like I can't move, but I should move, and so it's been a very difficult situation. And that's part of the reason why I didn't do a podcast for a couple of weeks, is because I felt stuck. And through prayer and through people praying for me, I just felt like, well, we got to keep moving forward. We got to keep living life, not only for me, but for my son, for the people around me. I have to keep living life. I got to keep moving. I got to keep being a witness. I got to keep doing what God has called me to do. And so here I am recording this podcast right now. Yeah, I mean, it's good. I feel good to be back. I feel good to be back in a rhythm and to be just here again. And it's great. I feel good. Me and the guys, Jonathan and Cheeks, who will be on the podcast in a couple of weeks. We hit the Between Us podcast again, and man, it's been so good to laugh with my bros, and have life in us again when life has been lifing. And so yeah, so we're getting back. We're growing, we're learning, we're going, and we're getting back. And that's what's important. And so, yeah, I just wanted to jump back to that. But the other thing is, don't underestimate the power of prayer. And even with this whole situation with my friend missing, something that I've learned is, and I learned this, I think I talked about this in a recent podcast, where I've learned to be okay with being the villain of someone else's story. Because someone else has a story of you or perception of you, and their perception is their reality, but it's not the reality. Their truth about somebody is not the truth about somebody. And so for me in this whole situation with my friend missing, I'm okay with being the villain because I'm, people think that because I'm supporting his wife and the past behind that, and what she's done in the past, people think, oh man, how can you support somebody like that or do this or that or blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know what? God loves me. God loves you. God loves her. If I have to be the villain in your narrative, so be it. But at the end of the day, when I die, I know where I'm going. I know that I will be judged for every action. So what I'm going to choose to do is stand on business, hold down the business, hold down the fort, and trust and walk in love. I mean, there's these tattoos that I got on my fingers in 2020 with everything that happened. And it says, live true, walk love. And so I try to live true to what God has for me. I try to live by, you guys heard me say this before, that is my biblical filter. And I try to live by that filter. I try to live true. But then I also try to walk love. I try to walk out in love because I have this foundation with me. I've built my house on the rock and not the sand. Because I have that, I can walk out in love, and that my foundation moves with me. And that's where it is. It's kind of like this. It's like if you're walking, this is a weird analogy. It's kind of like this. It's like, how easy is it to walk in sand with like flip flops on, or some kind of like sandal that's like very loose, right? Versus like walking barefoot in sand. I would say it's probably easy to walk barefoot in sand. And the same thing, like my foundation is within me. It's a part of me. So as I'm walking in sand, I can walk in sand confidently because I'm following the path that the Lord has for me, and I don't have these other false foundations that are taking me away from what the Lord has for me. And so, yeah, so I'm okay with being the villain in anybody's story because I know who I am. And I know whose I am, and I can say that not only confidently but cockily. Oh, I'm gonna get made so. Well, people are gonna make fun of me for that. I can say that cocky because I love the Lord and I know that God has my back. I think of the story of one of the prophets, and I mean, you want to talk about being cocky and confident. And he's going to battle now. This is the BLP version. This is the Bobby Lloyd Peacock version. So it gets a little hood, gets a little extra. But picture this: you have, back in the day, there's these people that were like worshiping like a false god, a false god, like Baal, like back in the Old Testament. And there was this event that happened. I don't like saying Bible stories, but I like to say Bible events, because like when we say their stories, we think of them as fables, but these are events, like historical events that happen. So there's this historical event that happened in the Old Testament, and you had all of these like quote unquote like witches and wizards and like false priests, like basically trying to get this cow that was on the altar to start on fire, because there was this prophet that was like, yo, if your God can do this, prove to me that your God can do this. And so they go day and night or whatever, and obviously nothing happens. So the homie was like, all right, it's my turn. So he walks up and he's all like, you know what? Like, I can just envision him like touching the cow, and like the dead cow or whatever. And he's all like, man, it's too dry. And what he started to do, he started pouring buckets of water on this cow. And I can just picture everybody like, what is he doing? And as he's doing that, he's all like, nah, man, I need more buckets. Let's get more buckets. At that point, he was being a little cocky. And he prays. And just like that, bam, things started on fire. Like lightning struck and bam, See, the intentions were confidence. The water was extra, but he's stepping in that confidence, and that's the kind of confidence that I want. I don't always have, but I know in times that I can be cocky in my relationship with the Lord because I know whose I am, and I can pour buckets on people and their thoughts, because I know whose I am. And so if someone says something face to face to me and be like, yo, you are this, I'm like, nah, man. Nah, I'm actually this, but thank you. Kind of thing. And then, I don't know, maybe I just got a little bit of an attitude. Maybe I'm just a little bit spicy in this podcast because I've been walking through so much stuff, and maybe I'm venting a little bit, And so, yeah. I got something to share with y'all. My son, he learned how to ride a bike with no training wheels. And it was very, very, very bittersweet. Very bittersweet. Something that I'm learning with my son is I can teach my son a couple of things, but I cannot teach my son everything. Like, he's learning how to read right now. And if you are a teacher, like a kindergarten teacher and a preschool teacher, or second grade teacher, like, listen, I have so much respect for you because y'all can do what I cannot do. Like, the amount of patience and grace it has to take for me to teach my son how to read is so hard. It's like, yo, this is the word. Like, you just said this word like a page ago, but it's been also awesome to watch him grow and learn how to read, but it's also been difficult. But he taught himself how to ride a bike with no training wheels, and I was not there, and it was bittersweet because I wanted to be there. We were having moments where I was teaching him how to ride a bike, and next thing you know, I got a FaceTime call from his mom, and she's like, "Hey, Bo wants to show you something." I'm like, "All right, cool, I got time." He picks up one of his friend's bikes, and he just gets up and starts riding. And I kind of teared up a little bit, and I'm like, man, that could have been our moment. And it's crazy what, like, divorce does. It's crazy being away from my son in that moment and just being like, man, I have to be over the phone saying that I'm proud of you. Like, instead of being there in the moment and watching you do this. And so it was very bittersweet. But that next weekend, like, we went out and we got him a bike, and I thought, man, I can longboard while, he rode his bike, and he was way too fast. And so we had to get me a bike, but it was awesome. He loves riding bikes. Like, we get to bike to the local park. We get to hit the bike trails. We went out with a old mentor of mine, and we rode 4 miles, and he had the best time, and we did a little picnic, and it was amazing. The only stinking part is that it's starting to get a little cooler, and it's starting to get darker sooner, so we can't ride as often or as long anymore. But it's been awesome just to see him grow in that area, and it's been really cool, really, really cool. And to me, this is just another thing of, like, one, kids are expensive, but they're worth the investment. Like, we had to go out and get my son a bike, and then I had to go out and get a bike, and found a really good deal on a bike. And let me tell you something. If you have, like, a hitch behind your car, like, the things that you put in the hitch to the bike holder things, those things are expensive. Those things are, like, almost the cost of, like, an entry-level bike for a grown adult. It was crazy. Man, things are just expensive in general. But it is what it is. Um, but invest in your kids, invest in the time with your kids because it's worth it. Like, and this kind of just brings me to like my last point. I was listening to this Instagram reel um about relationships, and I want to bring this to parenting. And they said that there's two kind of like relationships where there's like side by side, like, and this is like within a marriage, side by side, and then like face to face. And I would actually go as far as to say that there's three kind of relationships, even with your kids. Um, like, and I would say this is like within the family nucleus, like the immediate nucleus, is that there's side by side. There's, well, we'll start with the worst one. There's back to back, side by side, and face to face within this analogy, right? And so, um, like, the worst one would be like, back to back, which is like, we're not talking to each other. Like um, we're just apart. Like, I'm not seeing you, you're not seeing me. We're not on the same page, right? And that could be like in relationships or within like even fatherhood, right? And then there's the side by side, which I think there are a lot of parents that are out there, a lot of fathers that are out there that are in this season or in this realm of parenting and not even realizing it. And the side by side is like, yo, let's watch a movie. Okay, I have you. Like, hey, let's go to the movie and watch this thing together. Or let's have a movie night and watch this, and that's happening like multiple times during the week. Or like, hey, you have your screen time and then I'm going to be on my phone having my screen time. And that's within relationships, and then also like within parenting, right? And let me tell you, sending reels back and forth, like, even though it is super funny, but that can't be the only relationship that y'all have, whether it's in a actual relationship or it's a relationship with a child. Yes, it's a way to connect, but it can't be the only connection that you have. Like, I have homies that we send reels and memes and all this stuff to each other because that's how we stay connected. But that's not the only thing that is keeping us connected. We're also having difficult conversations. We're also being real and raw and transparent with each other. And so those are ways, like, yes, it may be the start, but it's not the only thing. And so often it's so easy to give a child a phone. It's so often easy to give child a screen time so that you can have your screen time. And so now you're in side by side and y'all aren't even getting to know each other. But the relationship that I like to go after is face to face. And what that looks like is it's an investment, right? Do I have movie nights with my son? Absolutely. That's once a week. Sometimes, I'm not going to lie, it is twice a week. Does my son have screen time? Yes, we have an iPad, or I have an iPad here for him. That iPad has been dead for weeks. But part of it is he's in his mama boy stage. Whatever. I'll get him when he's a teenager. He's going to be wanting to hang out with me, hopefully. But we go out and do things. And like even if we're gaming, right? Like, we're gaming together. Like, if my son wants to game, cool. Like, I'm gonna teach you how to play Madden. I'm gonna teach you how to play these video games. So that we can do that together. Like, we go to the arcade. That's an experience that we are doing face to face and together. Um, and so it's like, how do we create more opportunities to be face to face with our kids? Like something that I do with my son every morning and every day after I pick him up, or every morning that I have him and every day after school or after daycare that I pick him up, that I have him. I do this, and I do it strategically. When he wakes up at my house, and we're getting ready for school and I'm bringing him to school, I do not put the music on right away. And so, unless he asks for it, because I want him to have like 5 minutes where it's not even me talking, but 5 minutes for him to just readjust to life. He doesn't need that dopamine hit right off the bat. And part of that is like sometimes we're just sitting in silence and just kind of just chilling. Other times it's like we're having a conversation. But I just want him to have a moment of this like silence. And it's the same after daycare. When I pick him up, it's like, yo, we just rocking like in the silence. And we're talking about his day and what he learned at school and what went good, what went bad, kind of thing. And so it's like moments of like that. It's like face to face, like investing in my kid and like buying a new bike and then me having to buy a bike. That's investing in my child, and having those face to face moments. So if you're a father listening to this, or even if you're in a relationship listening to this, like I'm gonna tell you, this is the kind of like man that I'm gonna be. Like if I ever have the opportunity to get remarried. Sorry, I had to look at my audio levels here. This mic has been tripping out a little bit. But if I ever have the opportunity to get remarried, I'm not going to have a TV in my bedroom. Like, I don't even want to have the phone like in the bedroom at night, because I want that time to be face to face with my future wife, and us also not be distracted, because like if we don't do that, then potentially other things can happen, which would be great for her and for me. And like we can do the and then maybe play some Uno afterwards, or maybe just play some Uno, or maybe just talk to each other, or maybe read a book with each other, or read the Bible with each other, instead of just like, oh, let's turn on the TV and see what's on Netflix or whatever. Have moments like that, just not in the bedroom. Like no phones in the bedroom kind of thing. We can send each other reels throughout the day to stay connected. But once I get home, like I want my kids to have my attention. I want my wife to have my attention. Let me rephrase that. I want my wife to have my attention. I want my kids to have my attention. Because even in that, we tend to put our kids before we put our spouse. But the reality is our spouse is our number one ministry. Kids is number two. So face to face, y'all. Not back to back, not side to side. Live face to face with your kids. Have conversations. Invest in their life. So that's all I got. I'm back. I'm excited for next week's episode. We're going to be sitting down with my homie Lars. He's like the second biggest Green Bay Packer fan I know. He's either first or second. But super excited to sit down with him, talk about his story. It's a ride. It is a ride. And what God has done for him, for his wife, for his family. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to be back in the saddle, and like I just recording now. I just feel like this is like the sense of like, yes, let's go after it. I'm also in a 90-day challenge as well. I was going to plan this out where I was hoping to get a couple of guys and do something, for the podcast, and do a reward for the person who saw the most success. But we ain't ready for that. But 2025, yo, listen. we're going after it. And like there's going to be a 90-day challenge within 2025 that I'm excited. Um, yeah, sorry we couldn't do it this time. And it's a potential of winning some cash. So I'm excited for that, having conversations around that. And yeah, I just want to see more people grow. Like I'm growing, like I'm trying to work out more. Not trying, I am working out more. And just investing in myself. And so, anyways, thank y'all so much for listening. Thank y'all so much for being a part of this. Remember, go if you want to support the channel. There's a couple ways. Check out Friend of Felix. Check out the link down below. Use my discount code Peacock10. Like I said, this is not sponsored. It's just a way that you can support the channel financially. Another way is like sharing the content, liking it on YouTube, liking it on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you listening to podcasts. And yeah, leave a comment. Like, let me know what you think about this. Even if you disagree with some of the stuff I say, like, let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation, a constructive conversation. So, anyways, thank y'all so much for tuning in to the Father Built podcast. This podcast is all about building up fathers in holiness, healthiness, and happiness, aiming to give these tools to fathers to build their house of legacy. Messing up my outro. Last thing I might say is I might switch it up to just men in general, even though it's called Father Built Podcast, and even though it's mainly talking about fatherhood, but we're also talking about like masculinity as well. So, but anyways, like always, guys, remember, peace, love, blessings. We out.